Revenge films.
I live with my only son and husband, and we're a happy family of 3. My husband's parents live nearby in the neighborhood, which was great in theory, but there was one major problem, and that was my mother-in-law, and it's really bothering me. That problem was only exuberated by the fact that they live so close by, and my husband's parents would invite us over to eat with them from time to time. Normally, that should be a happy thing, for my husband to see his parents and for our son to spend time with his grandparents. But I hated this more than anything, and the reason for that was how dirty my mother-in-law was. I don't know about her shower habits, but I realized over the years that my mother-in-law apparently didn't brush her teeth. When she smiles, I could see her teeth, but they were all stained yellow, and they even had questionable black stains on them. They were really gross, and to be honest, to the point it shocked me that she was okay with that. I don't know how anyone can live with a mouth like hers. On top of that, because she didn't brush her teeth, her breath was awful. My mother-in-law would often get down close to my son to talk to him at her level, but whenever she does, he can't help but scrunch up his face because it smells so terrible. That being said, my father-in-law and my husband generally have clean teeth, and they both seem to have good oral hygiene. Even when I stayed over at their house, my father-in-law was brushing his teeth thoroughly. My husband also said the same thing, and he taught our son to brush his teeth as well. I could only assume that maybe they looked at their mother as an example of what not to do, and as a fearful example of what happens when you don't brush your teeth. Usually after you have a meal, you would brush your teeth, at least once or if not twice a day. But even when I've gone to stay the whole day at my in-laws, I've never once seen my mother-in-law brush her teeth. Ever since I married my husband, and it had been a few years, I've stayed at their house a number of times through breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I never once seen her brush her teeth. Before or after a meal. I've actually looked around all the bathrooms and I couldn't even find a toothbrush in the first place. Just saying that would make me feel sick in itself, but then my mother-in-law would do the most horrifying thing to me. She had a habit of licking her spoon and using chopsticks all over, sometimes even sticking her tongue out to do so. And it would be one thing to do at home with her own plate, but whenever we go out to eat, she always wants to try other people's food. She's always asking to have a bite of everyone's food, and even if we don't say yes, she has a habit of sticking her utensils in regardless and taking a bite. The first time she did that to me, I froze in my seat. My mother-in-law's mouth came floating into my mind, and after that, my own food looked so disgusting that I couldn't even touch it. I completely lost my appetite. It would have been one thing if we had planned on sharing from the beginning, but I couldn't believe that she would take something that somebody else ordered. I was raised by my parents not to take what's not yours without permission, so I couldn't understand my mother-in-law's actions. Other than that, there was another horrifying incident. One day, when my son ordered a kid's lunch set at the restaurant, she said, "I think it's too early for him to be eating a whole burger." And as she said that, she took my son's burger and put a big bite into her mouth, chewed it up, spit out the spoon, and said, "Say, oh," tried to feed it to him. At that moment, I felt like I was going to explode, but I desperately held back my feelings and simply said to her, "Please don't do that. That's unnecessary. My son knows how to eat normally." And I snapped at her. Even my father-in-law and my husband said to her,
"Why would you do something that disgusting to a child's food?"
And they said that firmly to her, but the root of the problem wasn't solved with this. Because of that, I never wanted to go eat out with my mother-in-law. However, one day, I got another phone call from my mother-in-law, and she said that she wanted to go out to eat with the family. This time, I told her that we were busy and we couldn't join her. But she said that she had already arrived at the diner and that they had already finished ordering for all of us as well. She said that they arrived and poured water for 5 people and that they have food coming, so it would be wrong for the restaurant. And so, with tears in my eyes, I had no choice but to drag my feet to go. Even though I couldn't stand it, because this was also my mother-in-law, I wasn't able to be that firm with her, nor did I want to be rude to her. Before I even went to the restaurant, I thought that I was going to get depression from the thought of eating with her again. Just as we got to the restaurant, it seems that our plates were about to revive. There was a kid's meal set for my son, a steak set for my husband, and a gratin set for me. For the record, it's not like I ever said that gratin was my favorite food or that we chose these dishes ourselves. If anything, my mother-in-law is the one that liked gratin, and I already had such a bad feeling that I couldn't stand it. Every single time we're about to eat, in the middle of the meal, my mother-in-law asked for a bite, so in order to stop that, there have been times where I purposely ordered the exact same thing as her. I figured that if I do that, then she would have no reason to reach for my food. However, whenever I try to plan right before we finish ordering, she'll change her mind and change her order. "Actually, I'll take the fried chicken lunch instead," so that you order something different from me. My father-in-law yelled at her and said that she would confuse the employees, so stick with whatever you ordered. But then she nonchalantly says, "Because it's a waste to order the same thing, isn't it?" And she would order something separately with the intention of trying my food. It was so irritating. It's not like I was practically a clean freak either. If we're at home and my husband asks for a bite of my food and goes for it, it doesn't bother me at all. But for my mother-in-law who doesn't brush her teeth, it truly couldn't deal with it. And at the time, with no exception, my mother-in-law was eating beef curry. That's one of her favorite foods. But just as expected, she looked over at my grat and said, Hey, let me try a bite of that. But I didn't really want her anywhere near it, so I clearly said no, but then she came closer to my food anyways and said, Why not? It's just a little bite. Only one. Then my father-in-law stepped in, too.
Cut it out already!
And my husband also told her to stop pushing, but she kept insisting that she was only going to take a bite. Then she proceeded to lick all over her spoon with the curry beef on it. And then she drifted that licked spoon over to my plate and stuck it in. That moment, everything I had held in at this time snapped. Perhaps my father-in-law recognized that face and it changed, so he tried to say,
I'm sorry. Let's order something else for you.
But I've had enough. No, it's fine. I'm sorry, but I don't have any appetite anymore. I said that, but this time my mother-in-law threw a tantrum. Hey, isn't that awful? If you don't want me to try your food, then you should have just said no from the beginning. It was completely unreasonable for her to be angry, and even though I had only been polite to her up until now, I lost it. That's why everybody told you to stop, and I also said no when you asked. There's no way I can eat this, with your tongue all over it. It's disgusting. I never want to eat out with you ever again. I'm leaving. I stood up and picked up my son and left the restaurant. Behind me, I could hear the mother-in-law yelling something towards me, but I didn't care one bit. After I left my husband there, a little while later, my husband dragged back home his father. I still hadn't gotten over it, and I was still angry. I know you scolded her for me too, but I can't do this anymore. I've refused to eat out with that woman anymore. I mean, how many days has she gone without brushing her teeth? Are you really okay with that? Is she okay? And after she licked all over the spoon and stuck it into my food, there's no way I would be able to eat that. I was still letting it all out, everything that had been building up inside me. My husband couldn't say anything in response, and all he could do was keep apologizing.
I really am sorry. I've tried to talk to my mom about it multiple times, even as her son. I think it's gross. So of course you would find it even more disgusting. And that's fair.
If he was the type of husband to take his mom's side in the situation, I would have divorced him on the spot. My husband then proceeded to say that we didn't need to go out with his mother ever again. It turns out that my mother-in-law had been told by my husband and his father multiple times that she needs to brush her teeth, but because she didn't have any intention of fixing it at all, they thought it was useless to keep trying and had given up the last few years. He said that he hated it as well, but because I was behaving normally with her, he didn't realize that I hated it and I would lose it like that, and he apologized again. Apparently, after I left the restaurant, my mother-in-law was still yelling in the car. What kind of attitude is that towards her own mother-in-law? I just wanted to try one bite. What a terrible woman. I wonder how she was raised. What a disgrace. And she was throwing a tantrum by herself, so this time my husband lost it on her.
She hates how dirty you are! Do you still not understand? That's why Dad and I have been telling you for years now to brush your teeth. You must not realize it yourself, but your breath is also horrible. And if you're going to talk about how she was raised, then take a look at yourself. You need to think about those around you more, and that this also affects us!
He told me that happened in the car, and I was relieved. My father-in-law didn't have anything to say against it, and would say that he would apologize for everything up until now. And he said that, until my mother-in-law fixes her dirty habits, that I don't have to see her at all, which was a relief. With that, it seems like I won't have to deal with her for a while. Because if my husband and his father have been trying to tell her to brush her teeth for years, but she still didn't fix it, well, I can't imagine she'll be fixing it anytime soon. My father-in-law was a decent person, so I don't mind letting him see my son from time to time. And I'm glad John could also spend time with his grandfather. But when I spoke to him recently, he said that he was reaching his limit. He said that he was even considering getting a divorce from her. And to be honest, I'm secretly hoping for that day to come soon.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.